I wasn't supposed to feel jealous at my best friend's wedding. That's what I kept telling myself as I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting a tie I had no idea how to properly knot. It was Marcus's big day, the happiest day of his life. The day he was marrying the woman he'd been with for 4 years. And I was his best man. I should have been honored, proud, maybe a little emotional. Instead, my chest felt tight in a way I couldn't explain without sounding like a terrible person. Marcus and I had known each other since freshman year of college. We were assigned as random roommates, two strangers forced to share a shoebox-sized dorm with bunk beds and questionable carpet stains. He was loud, confident, effortlessly charming. I was quieter, more cautious, still figuring myself out. He had this way of filling up space. When he laughed, people turned. When he walked into a room, he owned it without trying. I remember thinking that first week, there's no way we're going to get along. But we did. Somewhere between late-night pizza runs, failed attempts at cooking actual meals, and cramming for exams at 3 in the morning, Marcus became my person. The guy who'd drag me out when I wanted to stay in. The one who'd throw an arm over my shoulder and say, "Relax, Dan, you think too much." Back then, I didn't even fully understand what I felt for him. I just knew that whenever he brought a girl back to the dorm, I suddenly found an excuse to disappear. Whenever he talked about someone he liked, something inside me twisted. I came out junior year. Not to him at first. To a girl in my literature class, actually. She hugged me and said she'd known all along. That stung more than I expected. Marcus found out a month later. I remember sitting on the edge of our bed, hands clasped so tight my knuckles were white. He was at his desk, half playing a video game, half listening to me ramble nervously. "I'm gay," I finally said. He went quiet. The game character died in the background. He turned around slowly in his chair, just looking at me. Not angry, not shocked, just thinking. Then he stood up, walked over, and pulled me into a hug so tight it knocked the air out of me. "Okay," he said simply. "You're still my annoying roommate." That was it. No drama, no awkward distance, no weird questions. If anything, we got closer after that, which was probably my biggest mistake. Because loving someone who treats you like you're irreplaceable, but only as a friend, is its own kind of torture. I never told him how I felt. I told myself it was a phase, a crush built on proximity and admiration. It would pass. Then he met Lily. He talked about her after their first date like he'd just discovered fire. "Dan, she's different," he'd said, pacing our apartment years later, grinning like an idiot. "She actually listens, and she laughs at my stupid jokes." I laughed too, because that's what best friends do. I met her a week later. She was kind, smart, the kind of person who makes you understand immediately why someone would fall for her, which somehow made it worse. Now, 5 years after that first date, I was standing in a hotel room an hour before their ceremony, trying to breathe normally. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Come in," I called. Marcus stepped inside, already in his suit, tie slightly crooked, hair styled, but still somehow messy in that effortless way he'd always had. For a second, I forgot how to speak. He looked grown, solid, certain. "You good?" he asked, shutting the door behind him. "You look like you're about to give a eulogy, not a speech." I forced a smile, just making sure I don't embarrass you. "Impossible," he said, walking closer. "You've been embarrassing me since 2013. He adjusted my tie without asking, fingers brushing briefly against my collarbone. It was such a small thing, but my body reacted like he'd done something much bigger. I hated that after all these years, it still happened. "You nervous?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "Yeah, but like, good nervous." His eyes softened in a way I'd seen before, but rarely. "I don't know what I'd do without you here, Dan," he added quietly. "You've been there for everything. Feels right that you're standing next to me today." The words hit harder than I expected. Because that was the problem. I was always next to him, just never the one he chose. I swallowed, keeping my voice steady. Where else would I be? He smiled at that, but it faded a little as he studied my face. "You sure you're okay?" For a split second, I considered telling him everything. How I'd loved him since we were 19. How every relationship I'd had felt slightly incomplete because none of them were him. How I'd almost skipped this wedding entirely because I didn't trust myself to stand there and watch him promise forever to someone else. But instead, I nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." He clapped my shoulder, satisfied. "All right, let's get me married." And as he turned to leave the room, I felt something shift inside me. Because for the first time, a quiet, dangerous thought crossed my mind. What if this wasn't just nerves? What if Marcus wasn't as certain as he wanted everyone, including himself, to believe? I didn't know it yet, but that question was about to change everything. The ceremony venue was one of those renovated barns just outside the city, exposed wooden beams, string lights hanging from the ceiling, big open windows letting in soft afternoon light. Lily had described it as rustic but elegant. Standing at the altar beside Marcus, I tried not to focus on how close we were. His shoulder brushed mine every time he shifted his weight. I could hear his breathing, slow at first, then slightly uneven as the music started and everyone stood. And then Lily walked in. She looked incredible. That kind of effortless beauty that makes the whole room go quiet without anyone planning it. Marcus inhaled sharply beside me. I didn't need to look at him to know what his face looked like. I'd seen that expression before, just not directed at me. The ceremony itself felt surreal, like I was watching it from a few feet outside my body. I held the rings. I adjusted Marcus's sleeve when it caught on his watch. I listened as they exchanged vows. Marcus went first. His voice cracked halfway through. "Lily, you're my best friend," he said, smiling at her in that open, unguarded way he only did when he really meant something. "You make me better. You challenge me. You calm me down when I spiral. You've seen me at my worst and somehow decided I was still worth it." The guests laughed softly. "I can't imagine my life without you. And I don't want to." Something in my chest tightened so hard I thought it might actually hurt. Because I'd once imagined a version of my life that included him like that. Not realistically, not out loud, just in quiet, late-night moments when I let myself wonder. Then Lily spoke. Her voice was steadier, but her hands trembled slightly when she reached for his. "Marcus, you feel like home," she said. "No matter where we are. You're the first person I want to tell everything to. The first person I look for in a crowded room." I looked away at that, because I knew that feeling. I'd lived it for years. When they kissed, everyone clapped. I clapped too, and I smiled, because that's what best men do. The reception was louder, easier to hide in. Music, drinks, laughter filling the space so thick no one noticed if someone stepped outside for air. Which is exactly what I did. I loosened my tie and walked out behind the barn, where the noise faded into a dull hum. The evening air was cooler now, brushing against my overheated skin. I wasn't crying. I told myself that mattered. I just needed a minute. "Thought I'd find you out here." I stiffened. "Marcus." "Of course." I turned slowly. He'd taken off his jacket, sleeves rolled up, tie slightly loosened. He looked flushed, not drunk, just overwhelmed. "Shouldn't you be inside?" I asked lightly. "Your wife might think you ran." He huffed a quiet laugh, but didn't smile fully. "She's dancing with her cousins." I needed a break. He stepped closer, leaning against the wooden railing beside me. For a few seconds, we just stood there in silence. "You gave a hell of a speech," he said finally. I shrugged. "I kept it PG. You left out that time I threw up in our microwave." "That was a gift," I replied. "I spared you." That got a real smile. Then it faded again. "You've been off all day," he said quietly. I stared straight ahead. "It's your wedding. Everything's emotional." "Not like this." His voice was softer now. "Careful. You sure you're okay?" There it was again. That question. I let out a slow breath. "You ever think—" I started, then stopped. He waited. I swallowed. "You ever think about how weird it is? That we went from two idiots in a dorm room to this?" He studied me. "Yeah. It's kind of insane. Feels fast. It's been 8 years, Dan." I nodded. "I know." Another pause. The air between us felt heavier than it should have. "I don't want things to change," he said suddenly. I blinked. "They will. You're married now. You know what I mean." He turned toward me fully. "I don't want to lose you." The sincerity in his voice made my stomach twist. "You're not losing me," I said carefully. He searched my face like he didn't fully believe that. "You've pulled away these last few months," he said. That caught me off guard. "I haven't." "You have," he insisted gently. "You don't call as much. You cancel plans. You look at me like you're about to say something, and then don't." I looked away. Because he wasn't wrong. I had pulled back. I thought it would make this easier. "It's just life," I said too quickly. "Don't do that," he said. "Do what?" "Pretend." The word hung between us. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint line between his brows when he was thinking too hard. "We've never pretended with each other," he continued. "Not once." My pulse was pounding now. "You're married, Marcus," I said, barely above a whisper. I know. Then what are we doing? His jaw tightened slightly. I just need to know you're not disappearing on me. The desperation in his voice was subtle, but it was there. And suddenly, something inside me snapped. I'm not disappearing, I said, my voice rougher than I intended. I just needed space. From me. Yes. The word came out before I could stop it. Silence. The kind that feels like standing on thin ice. Why, he asked. And this time, I couldn't dodge it. Because if I lied again, I'd lose him anyway. So I did the one thing I'd avoided for almost a decade. I told the truth. Because I've been in love with you since we were 19. The words sat in the air between us. Raw. Unprotected. Marcus didn't move. Didn't blink. For a second, I thought maybe he hadn't heard me. But then his breath hitched. And the way he looked at me changed. The second the words left my mouth, I wanted to grab them back. But it was too late. Marcus just stared at me. Not angry. Not disgusted. Just stunned. In love, he repeated quietly, like he was testing how it sounded out loud. I nodded once. My throat felt tight, but I forced myself not to look away. Since college? Yeah. A muscle in his jaw flexed. And you never told me? I let out a small, humorless laugh. You were busy dating half the campus. That's not. He stopped himself, exhaling sharply. Dan. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I hadn't seen in years. You're my best friend. I know. And you just carried that? For how long? Long enough that I thought it would pass. And it didn't. It wasn't a question. No. The music from inside swelled as the DJ switched songs. Laughter drifted out through the open doors. The world kept moving like this wasn't happening. Marcus took a step back, like he needed physical space to think. I'm married, he said again, softer this time. I know. I love Lily. That one hurt more than I expected. I know, I repeated. He studied my face carefully, searching for something. Resentment, maybe. Or accusation. I didn't. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't, I said honestly. You can't help who you love. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Then why tell me now, he asked. Because I couldn't keep standing next to you pretending I don't want you. Because watching you kiss her felt like swallowing glass. Because if I didn't say it tonight, I was going to lose myself trying to stay quiet. But what I said instead was simpler. Because you asked. He went quiet again. The weight of it settled in. He stepped closer this time, slower. You're not a phase, he said carefully. You're not confused. I blinked. What? I mean, I'm not saying you are. He struggled for words in a way I'd rarely seen. I've never felt that. For a guy. I know. But when you said that just now, he swallowed. It didn't feel wrong. That made my heart slam painfully against my ribs. Marcus, I warned softly. I'm not saying I feel the same, he said quickly. I'm just saying it didn't feel disgusting. Or weird. A bitter smile tugged at my mouth. Congrats. You've achieved basic decency. That's not what I mean, he said, frustrated now. You think I haven't noticed? Noticed what? The way I look for you in a room too, he said. The air left my lungs. What? You think it's just Lily? He asked quietly. You think she's the only one who feels like home? My mind scrambled. Marcus, stop. I'm not saying I'm secretly in love with you, he said, voice lower now. I'm just saying, you matter in a way that scares me sometimes. I stared at him, because that was the closest he'd ever come. Then why get married? I asked before I could stop myself. His face hardened slightly. Because I love her. The finality in that sentence hit like a door slamming shut. He wasn't confused. He wasn't secretly choosing between us. He was choosing her. I'm not competing, I said quietly. You're not. It feels like I am. Silence. The music inside shifted again, slower now. Probably a couple's dance. Marcus looked toward the open barn doors. I need to go back in, he said. Of course he did. Yeah. But he didn't move right away. You should have told me earlier, he said softly. When? While you were planning the proposal? He winced. I would have handled it differently. How? He didn't have an answer. We both knew there wasn't one. Finally, he stepped closer one last time. I don't regret you, he said. It wasn't what I wanted, but it wasn't nothing. I don't regret you either, I replied. His hand lifted like he was going to touch my shoulder. Instead, it hovered in the air for a second, then dropped. And just like that, he turned and walked back toward the lights. Back toward his wife. Back toward the life he chose. I stood there alone in the dim glow behind the barn, my chest hollowed out, but strangely steady. Because as much as it hurt, there was something else underneath it. Relief. The secret wasn't mine anymore. And now I had a choice. Stay? Or finally learn how to let him go. I didn't know yet which one I was strong enough to do. But the night wasn't over. And neither, apparently, was whatever this was between us. I stayed outside longer than I meant to. Long enough for the night air to cool the heat in my face. Long enough for the music to shift into something slower. Something meant for couples swaying too close under dim lights. When I finally walked back inside, I half expected people to look at me differently. Like they somehow knew. But no one did. Lily was in the middle of the dance floor, laughing as Marcus spun her clumsily. He almost stepped on her dress, and she smacked his chest playfully. He looked happy. Not pretending. Not conflicted. Just happy. That hurt, but it also grounded me. Whatever confusion he felt about me, it wasn't stronger than what he felt for her. And that mattered. I moved toward the bar, needing something to do with my hands. You okay? I turned. Lily. Of all people. She looked radiant up close, slightly flushed, slightly breathless from dancing. Yeah, I said automatically. You look amazing. She smiled warmly. Thank you. And your speech. Daniel, that was beautiful. There was something in her eyes. Not suspicion. Not jealousy. Just awareness. You've known him the longest, she said gently. You know parts of him I probably never will. I forced a small smile. That's how it's supposed to work. She tilted her head slightly. Is it? The question was quiet. Careful. And suddenly I wondered how much she saw. You don't have to compete with me, she added softly. My stomach dropped. I'm not. I know, she said quickly. I didn't mean it like that. She hesitated. He talks about you like you're his anchor, she continued. Like when everything's too loud. He checks if you're steady. That hit deeper than anything Marcus had said. He almost didn't propose last year, she admitted. My head snapped up. What? She smiled faintly. Cold feet. Not because of me. Just because he hates losing things. And he was scared marriage meant losing you. The world felt like it tilted slightly. He didn't tell you that? She asked. No. She nodded slowly, like that confirmed something for her. I'm not threatened by you, she said. But I know you matter. And if you ever need space, or distance, or whatever makes this easier, I won't take it personally. Her kindness almost broke me. I don't want to disappear, I said quietly. Then don't, she replied simply. And just like that, she squeezed my hand and walked back toward her husband. Her husband. The word still felt strange. The night blurred after that. More drinks. More dancing. A group photo where Marcus pulled me in so tight I almost stumbled. At one point, he leaned down near my ear and said, "Don't vanish on me." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. By the time the send-off happened, sparklers lining the gravel path, cheers echoing into the dark, I felt both exhausted and strangely clear-headed. Marcus hugged his parents, kissed Lily again. Then he turned to me. For a second, it was just us. Noise fading around the edges. He pulled me into a hug. Not the casual, one-armed kind. The real kind. His grip tightened. I'm glad you told me, he murmured. My chest tightened. Me too. You scared the hell out of me, he added, almost laughing. Sorry. He leaned back just enough to look at me. I don't want this to change us. It already did, I said honestly. He absorbed that. Okay, he said finally. Then we figure out what the new version looks like. New version. I nodded. Go, I told him. Your wife's waiting. He gave me one last searching look. Then he let go and walked toward the car. I watched the taillights disappear down the long gravel driveway. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel stuck. I felt sad, but not trapped. Because loving someone doesn't mean you're owed them. And finally saying it out loud meant I could start building a life that wasn't orbiting his. 2 weeks later, I didn't answer his first call. Not because I was angry. Because I needed to breathe without him in the background. He texted instead. You alive? I stared at it for a long time. Then typed back. Yeah, just figuring some stuff out. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then disappeared. Then reappeared. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. And for once, that didn't feel like a promise I was clinging to. It felt like something steady I could step away from without it collapsing. I didn't know yet if I'd ever stop loving him. But I knew this. I was finally choosing myself. And that was something I should have done a long time ago. But life has a way of testing decisions. Because a month later, Marcus showed up at my apartment unannounced. And the look on his face told me something had gone very, very wrong. The knock wasn't aggressive. It wasn't desperate either. Just firm. Repeated twice. I opened the door expecting a delivery, Or maybe my neighbor asking about a package. Instead, Marcus stood there in jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, hair unstyled, jaw tight. He looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. "Hey," I said carefully. "Can I come in?" He didn't smile. Didn't joke. My stomach dropped. "Yeah, of course." He stepped inside slowly, glancing around like he hadn't been there 100 times before. "Is Lily okay?" I asked immediately. "She's fine." That should have relaxed me. It didn't. He ran a hand over his face. "We need to talk." I almost laughed. That's never a good opener. He didn't react. And that's when I knew this wasn't small. He sat down on the edge of my couch, but didn't lean back. Just braced his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I stayed standing for a second, studying him. Then I sat across from him. What happened? Silence. Long enough that my pulse started climbing. Finally, he looked up at me. "She knows." My heart dropped. "Knows what?" "About you." The air left my lungs in a sharp exhale. "About what I told you." I clarified. He nodded. "How?" I told her. That surprised me more than anything. "You what?" "I wasn't going to hide it," he said defensively. "You think I'm that guy?" "No," I said quickly. I didn't expect you to bring it up." "I didn't bring it up casually," he muttered. "She asked why I was off that night. And I don't lie to her." There was something sharp in his voice. Guilt. Frustration. Maybe fear. "So what happened?" I asked carefully. He leaned back finally, staring up at my ceiling like the answer might be written there. "She wasn't mad," he said. "At first." That didn't sound promising. She said she appreciated the honesty. That it made sense. That she always knew we had something intense. Intense. That word again. And then, I pressed. She asked me if I ever felt it back. My chest tightened. "What did you say?" He didn't answer right away, which was an answer in itself. "Marcus." He closed his eyes briefly. I said I don't know. The room went very, very quiet. "You don't know?" I repeated. "I don't know what it means," he snapped suddenly. "I don't know if it's love, or just dependency, or history, or comfort. You've been in my life for almost a decade, Dan. That doesn't just shut off." "That's not what she asked," I said quietly. His jaw flexed. "She asked if I've ever imagined choosing you." My stomach flipped. "And have you?" The question hung there between us. Heavy. He looked at me. Really looked at me. "I don't fantasize about you," he said first, almost like he needed to clarify that. "I'm not secretly wishing I was with you." That stung, but I held steady. "But," I prompted. "But sometimes," he admitted, voice lower now. "I wonder what my life would look like if I'd met you at a different time. If you'd told me sooner. If I'd understood myself better back then." My heartbeat was loud in my ears. "That's not the same as loving me," I said. "I know. But it's not nothing either." "No," he agreed. We sat in that truth. "So what did she say?" I asked. "She said she can't compete with a what if." The words felt like a punch. "She thinks you're my unfinished business." I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "I don't want to be that." "I know. She deserves better than that." "I know," he repeated. "So why are you here?" I asked finally. That was the real question. He stood up abruptly and started pacing. "Because I'm angry," he admitted. "At me?" "No," he shook his head. "At the timing. At the fact that I didn't see it. At the fact that I feel like I missed something and I don't even know what it was." "You didn't miss anything," I said firmly. He stopped pacing. "How can you say that?" "Because I was there," I said. "You loved her. You chose her. You still choose her." "And you?" he challenged. "What about me? Did I ever have a chance with you? Or was I just some straight fantasy you projected onto?" That hit harder than I expected. "You were never a fantasy," I said quietly. "You were real. That's why it hurt." He went still. "I don't want to lose my marriage over confusion," he said. "Then don't," I replied immediately. He looked almost surprised at how fast that came out. "I'm not here to break you up," I continued. "I never wanted that." "Then what do you want?" he asked, almost desperately. And for the first time since he walked in, I didn't hesitate. "I want you to go home," I said. He froze. "I want you to choose her without wondering about me," I continued. "And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't have gotten married." His face tightened. "That's harsh." "It's honest." Silence. "You think I'm selfish," he said. "I think you're scared," I corrected gently. "You don't like loose ends. You don't like not knowing. But love isn't a checklist." He stared at me like he was seeing me differently. "You're letting me go," he said slowly. "I have to." The words hurt, but they felt right. He stepped closer. "So that's it?" he asked quietly. You have a wife, I said. Go be a husband. For a second, I thought he might argue. Instead, he nodded. Slowly, like it cost him something. He moved toward the door, then paused. If things were different, he started. Don't, I said softly, because I couldn't survive a hypothetical right now. He held my gaze one last time. Then he left. The door clicked shut behind him, and I stood there alone in my apartment, heart aching but steady. Because this time, I hadn't begged. I hadn't hoped. I hadn't waited for him to choose me. I'd chosen myself, and whatever happened next would finally be on him. Part 6. He didn't call the next day, or the day after that. For the first time in almost 10 years, my phone wasn't lighting up with his name, and it was quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar. Not empty, just still. I kept expecting the panic to hit, the urge to text him something casual. A meme. You alive? Like he'd sent me weeks ago. But it didn't come. Instead, I slept. Actually slept. And that alone told me I'd made the right choice. 3 weeks passed before I heard from him again. It wasn't a call. It wasn't a text. It was Lily, which I hadn't expected. Her name popped up on my screen one evening while I was halfway through cooking pasta. I stared at it for a long time before answering. Hey, I said carefully. Hi, Daniel. Her voice sounded steady. Not emotional. Not cold. Just steady. I hope it's okay I called, she added. Yeah, of course. A pause. I won't keep you long, she said. I just wanted you to hear this from me. My grip tightened slightly on the phone. We're okay. The tension I didn't realize I was holding eased just a little. Marcus told me everything, she continued. The pacing, the panic, the dramatic visit to your apartment. I almost smiled at that. He's dramatic, I said softly. Yes, she agreed. He is. Another small pause. But he came home, she added. And he didn't leave again. That mattered. He chose me, she said plainly. And for some reason, hearing it from her didn't hurt the way I expected. It felt resolved. I'm glad, I said honestly. I am too, she replied. Silence settled between us, but it wasn't awkward. I don't think you're the villain in this, she said after a moment. And I don't think he is either. I think you both held something quietly for too long. She wasn't wrong. But we're building something real, she continued. And that means no more what-ifs. I swallowed. That's fair. And I need you to understand something, she said gently. You matter to him, but not in a way that replaces me. I know. Do you? She asked softly. This time, I didn't answer immediately. Because a month ago, I might not have known. But now? Yeah, I said. I do. She exhaled, like she'd been waiting for that. Then we're okay, she said. And somehow, I believed her. Marcus didn't reach out until a week after that. A simple text. Coffee. Neutral territory. No drama. I stared at it. And for the first time, my heart didn't lurch painfully. It just beat. Normal. Okay, I typed back. We met at the same place we used to study in college. It had been renovated since then, less sticky tables, more overpriced lattes, but it still smelled like burnt espresso and nostalgia. He was already there when I arrived. He stood when he saw me. That small gesture hit differently now. We didn't hug. Not at first. We just sat. You look better, he said after a moment. So do you? He nodded. I'm sorry, he added. For what? For dragging you into my confusion. I studied his face. He looked calmer, less frantic. I'm not fragile, I said. I know. He gave a small, almost sheepish smile. That's kind of the problem. We both laughed quietly. I was scared, he admitted. Not of you. Of losing control. You don't like not understanding yourself, I said. Yeah. Neither do I. He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. I don't regret you loving me, he said carefully. And I don't regret telling Lily. Good. But I don't love you like that, he finished. The words landed softer this time. Because I already knew. I know, I said. And I don't want you waiting for me. I'm not, I replied. He searched my face like he was testing that. You deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation, he said. That's the goal. A small silence. Then he stood. This time, when he pulled me into a hug, it felt different. Not charged. Not desperate. Just familiar. You're still my anchor, he murmured. And you're still my idiot, I replied. He laughed against my shoulder. And when he pulled away, there was no unfinished sentence lingering in the air. No hypothetical. No almost. Just history. And respect. 6 months later, I went on a date that didn't feel like a distraction. His name was Aaron. He was patient. Observant. The kind of man who didn't try to compete with ghosts. On our third date, he asked about my past relationships. And for the first time, when I mentioned Marcus, my voice didn't shake. He was my best friend, I said. Was? Aaron asked gently. I smiled. He still is. Just in a healthier way. Aaron nodded like that made perfect sense. And maybe it finally did. Loving Marcus had shaped me. Letting him go had steadied me. And choosing myself? That had saved me. Because sometimes the greatest love story isn't about who you end up with. It's about who you stop waiting for. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting anymore. A year after Marcus's wedding, I stood in a different suit. Not at an altar, not in a barn with string lights, but on the balcony of my own apartment, adjusting my collar while Aaron tried to figure out how to open a bottle of wine without launching the cork into traffic. "Why are you nervous?" he asked, squinting at the bottle like it had personally offended him. "I'm not nervous. You've checked your phone 6 times. I exhaled slowly. Marcus and Lily are coming over. Aaron raised an eyebrow. Oh, not threatened. Not jealous. Just aware. Are we doing this? He asked gently. I nodded. Yeah, we are. A year ago, that idea would have twisted something inside me. Now, it just felt like a step forward. When they arrived, it wasn't dramatic. No tension thick enough to choke on. Just a knock at the door and Marcus holding a plant like he'd personally grown it. For your place, he said. We figured you shouldn't be trusted with living things alone. Lily rolled her eyes affectionately. Aaron stepped forward before I could. Marcus, right? I've heard the legendary dorm stories. Marcus laughed. Oh, you've heard those? Only the edited versions, Aaron replied smoothly. I watched the 3 of them for a second. This was the moment I used to be terrified of. My past and my present in the same room. And it didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt balanced. We sat around my dining table, eating takeout and talking about normal things. Work, travel plans, a disastrous attempt Marcus made at assembling IKEA furniture. At one point, Lily reached for Marcus's hand absent-mindedly while laughing at something Aaron said. Marcus didn't even look at her when he squeezed it back. It was automatic, natural, unquestioned. And instead of pain, I felt something else. Closure. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind. Later, when Lily and Aaron got pulled into a conversation about hiking trails, Marcus leaned back in his chair and looked at me. You good? He asked softly. The same question he'd asked on his wedding day. But this time, there was no edge to it. No fear underneath. Yeah, I said honestly. I am. He studied me for a second longer, like he was checking for cracks. Then he nodded. Good. No almost confession. No lingering what if. Just 2 men who had survived loving each other in different ways. After they left, Aaron helped me clear the table. You okay? He asked casually. I smiled at the irony. Yeah. You don't look like someone who just lost something, he observed. I didn't, I replied. He stepped closer. What did you do? I thought about it for a second. I stopped trying to rewrite a story that was already finished. Aaron smiled softly at that. And how does that feel? Like breathing without holding it first. He kissed me then. Not rushed. Not uncertain. Just steady. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't comparing it to anyone else. A few weeks later, Marcus texted me a photo. Him and Lily on a beach somewhere, wind in their hair, sun too bright for the camera. Still my anchor, the caption read. I looked at it, smiled, then typed back. Still my idiot. And that was it. No ache. No secret hope. Just history that didn't own me anymore. If you'd asked 19-year-old me how this would end, I would have imagined something dramatic. A last-minute confession. A wedding interrupted. A grand, cinematic choice. But real life isn't a movie. It's quieter, messier, and sometimes more honest. Marcus was the love that taught me who I was. Aaron is the love that lets me be it. And the most important thing I learned? Loving someone deeply doesn't guarantee they're meant for you. But letting them go with grace? That's its own kind of strength. And this time, I'm not standing next to someone hoping they'll turn around and choose me. I'm standing in my own life. Chosen.